Welcome to Minami Lane, the street management sim where you start from small and expand your village, build shops and curate dishes, customizing buildings and keeping your villagers happy. This is a precious little game, so please subscribe and enjoy the video. On day 1, my street looked very barren. This fella here asked for a boba store, but that was too expensive. I had none of the requirements, so landing on a ramen store instead, I set the menu to something I would eat and opened the street. It seemed the general sentiment was less shrimp, less noodle and less egg. As such, I adjusted accordingly the next morning, and seeing as I had available funds, I built up a small park for extra beauty, necessary for high comfort, and opened again. My fussy customers wanted less noodles this time, so adjusting again, I decided to increase my customers with a new house, all of whom were also unhappy with my ramen design choice. Hopefully making the final rendition, I remember the raccoon fella's request and checked the boba store, which needed $200. I am much too poor, but at least the customers were happy, saying I'd found the perfect recipe. My store was truly coming together. Renaming the store to Perfect Ramen, I decided more beauty was the way forward. A park supplied 5, but a cafe supplied 2, and needing it anyway, I chose that as the way forward. Just needing $20 more, I waited for my one store to do its work, and ended the day with $259. Nice. I finally built up the store, set the perfect tea recipe, and hoped everyone would enjoy it. The sentiment was decent, requesting less tapioca and less cream. When the day ended, I checked my missions, requiring one more house and a little more satisfaction. Fixing this by adjusting the tea recipe, I was happy to see people thought it was perfect and my satisfaction passed the required quota. Only 5 more citizens were needed, but I opted instead to create a park. As more people arrived, more beauty was required and I couldn't afford to drop any comfort at all. That day, I also had someone buy 3 cups of tea from the same store, then head down the street and buy ramen as well. Absolutely contributing to the economy right there. So, funds secured and both of my stores at maximum reviews, I constructed another house, increasing my population. I still had more people than beauty though, so as the day progressed, my comfort slowly decreased, but still solidly above the required 75, I was able to complete my mission. As such, I was happy to move my business to a new street with older people with different tastes and larger possibilities in terms of buildings. My goal was to bring back the youth, so building a modern house, I upgraded the advertising on my ramen store and was happy to see the recipe was perfect for the older folks. The youth though wanted more noodles and more eggs and were much less impressed by the price compared to the elders. In times of strife, segregate the community is what I say, so building up a separate store just for the youth, I built up a bowl and set a price, upgrading the look a little and opened the lane. Already, it was great to see only old people at the old store and only young people at the young store. I still wasn't making much money though, so checking out a bookstore and a park, I decided instead to upgrade my bathhouse for beauty, spending the day listening to the citizens and noting my ramen reviews. One lady in particular had asked for more stores, and it was a bother, but needing the electoral votes, I gave in. Leaving one solid day for more money to flow in, I removed some shrimp from the young folk ramen and built my bookstore. I needed $2 more. Why am I even stressing about this? None of my citizens pay taxes. They should add taxes to Minami Lane. Deserved as well, they're still complaining about the shrimp. So by day 15, I was able to buy the bookstore and filled it with comic books, fantasy novels, and traveling guides. In general, it seemed the young people liked one of them and the older people liked 2 of them. The punchline being, the game didn't tell me which. Now, this wasn't a problem right now. I said that as foreshadowing. Right now, my problem was the lack of beauty, probably extruding from the sudden explosion of capitalistic ventures. I had 2 options, a park for $150 or a bathhouse for $350. It was more expensive but held more potential, and seeing my limit to 9 buildings on this street, I decided on that route and saved all of the following day's funds. My bookstore was getting mixed reviews, with the fossils saying the cheap price was a reason for suspicion, but this didn't change my large net profit thanks to my ramen stores working overtime, and I was luckily able to buy the bathhouse, customizing it to fit the color palette, and was very pleased to see that now that my beauty was higher than my population, my comfort skyrocketed through the day, ending with 5 higher than my goal, and I decided that all I needed now were some youths. But cleverly hiding below it was the real problem. Having some funds left, I upgraded the bookstore, and deciding I would need one more as the taste between generations was so great, I fixed the store selection and young ramen and began the day. Sure, my picks were perfect for the older folk. I asked the first customers. Both Herbert and Eugene found nothing that they liked. This was not great. My satisfaction had dropped by 8%, and by swapping a single book, the old community had banded together to despise my store. I quickly dropped the price, switching up the selection again, and once again, old folks liked one of the books and young folks liked 2 of them. I had, though, managed to repair my image within the geriatric collective, earning myself enough to afford a second bookstore, making a selection just for old people. I also made the price higher than the young bookstore, which seemed to be a big hit. Once again, my satisfaction was satisfactory. It wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Both my bookstores were one book off being perfect, and this was when my foreshadowing comes into play. Which of them do the people dislike? I gave it a shot, swapping fantasy novels for comics, buying an upgrade to old bookstore, and starting the day with high hopes. What I learned is that you should never do that, but that was because the older folk loved the books from young book and had banded together to despise old book. The price satisfaction dropped by 10. I didn't change the price, by the way. Trying my best to repair the situation, I remembered I needed youths to move in, so upgrading my modern home, I kept a close eye on the reviews for the bookstores, which seemed really positive for old book and still missing on selection on new book. There was no need for stress though, as all of my missions were completed and the lane was wrapped up. My new goal was attracting cats to the street, which wanted beauty, unlocking the new community service building, and of course cats before arriving. I could see why my help was required. There was just 6 convenience stores all selling a single item each. I quickly got to work setting the menu and upgrading the beauty on one, also upgrading the house for more customers and thus funds, hiring a demolishing service as well to get rid of one eyesore. It wasn't a great day in terms of business, but a single cat did show up, which made my terrible reviews all worth it. Restocking the stores and planting another tree really brought the area together, and I was glad to hear another cat had arrived. In general, most of the sold items were favorable, and having mostly youths, I decided that they would be my target audience. Upping the price a little, my main goal was to build a florist and only have 6 buildings. Now, the florist was very expensive, and another convenience store would also have to go, but they were all making me a minimum amount of money, so it stayed for now. I was also very happy that no one was annoyed at the new prices. As such, I had enough for the florist after demolition, but apparently I needed more villagers. My shops were also not super liked by the community, so trying my best to mend it, I decided now my savings would go towards a community service upgrade, which added 5 villages. This sentiment did not last though, as someone was longing for a place to relax. Now this was a real debate: get a bathhouse now or wait for the house upgrade. My beauty now was abhorrent though, so constructing one, I hoped it would lead to further sales. This wasn't particularly the case, but it did lead to more cat visitors, which I am always down for. My profits were also down, so after mixing the sold items again, I made upgrading my store a higher priority than the house for more money long term. The reviews also seemed more positive, 2 out of 3 stores selling 2 out of 3 correct items. I did have the funds to upgrade now, but remembering that more people made more of a difference than better marketing, I decided to wait instead. This turned out to be a decent idea, as I was now one day off getting 3 more people and closing in on finding the perfect combination of goods. Keep in mind, I had one elderly citizen who managed to leave a negative review at every one of my stores. I did find the perfect selection for young people though, deciding on 2 stores for them and leaving one for the older folk. I didn't have quite enough for the house upgrade, and I still needed slightly more comfort for the florist, so I let the day run. With 2 perfect stores selling goods, my comfort managed to skyrocket, and I was just one item off a perfect old convenience store. Using my funds, I upgraded the building to house 6 more people, my next goal being to find beauty somehow, as I knew my comfort would take a hit. And take a hit it did. On top of this, I gained 4 new elders for the house, making my perfect store a little useless. As such, I fixed up the elders store and used yesterday's funds to construct a florist. Making myself a nice little bunch, I waited for the reviews, which were negative, asking for more rose, more acacia, and less daisy. This didn't really bother me though, as the cat count was ever increasing, and my goal almost reached. I upgraded the beauty of the florist, making the street look really nice. The reviews were still pretty mixed, but I had 2 cats, 3 cats, and finally the 4th daily cat, completing my task on this street. This unlocked a new garbage service, random daily events, and bicyclists. I was here to prepare for a festival, and with cheap houses today and a grand in my pocket, I built up a ramen stand, upgraded both of the buildings, and let the day run. In general, more pork and more shrimp were the reviews, and discovering parks were cheap today, I fixed the store and purchased one, realizing I was still vastly lacking and upgrading it as well. The recipe was very off, less shrimp, more noodles, more pork, as I'd accidentally included an old person in the polls yesterday, messing up the results. These were quickly fixed though, and after building another ramen stand for the older people, my satisfaction quickly rose once again. My funds did as well, and excited to use them, I read the paper. The economy had crashed and I had lost 50 gold. I could still fix the recipe though, and exploring the buildings, I found a karaoke bar that was available for 350 gold. I needed 2 perfect ones to complete my mission here, and needing 15 people each, I picked out a house I wanted and set the price as my saving goal. I had made easily enough as the day passed, reading the morning paper and changing the prices as suggested before building up the old person's house and saving money for the day. Having less beauty now, my comfort did lessen a little, which I tried to fix by adjusting the old folk recipe, watching my citizens for the day, and realizing I now had 2 perfect ramen stores. Expanding time, I thought before reading the paper. Inflation had caused a real estate price spike, so instead I fixed the price and upgraded 1 ramen store. Still happy to see both stores being absolutely perfect. Until, of course, the next morning's paper came in. A celebrity shared their ramen on TokTok, changing the youth's recipe. Back to square 2. I didn't really care though. With enough funds now, I bought another park to counter my negative population beauty ratio, as my comfort wasn't awesome and I needed it to be for the purchase of a karaoke bar. Adding more noodles, more egg and less pork, I decided as the comfort was slowly inching upwards that saving money was the best move for now. The cyclists, by the way, just gave a little money as they passed through. Attempting to fix young ramen once again, I was happy to see my comfort and funds were enough for a karaoke bar. Adding 5 citizens, and after picking some tracks, I excitedly started the day. It seemed old people liked 2 out of the 3 of them, and young people liked 1 of them. As such, my next goal was to save funds for the second karaoke bar and some sort of decoration, as my satisfaction took a big hit thanks to my lack of beauty. The bar was my top seller though, and tweaking the tracks slightly, I watched all the reviews with a careful eye, deducting that old people liked Let Me Go and Pray With Me, and the youth liked Takoyaki, the song, not the fried ball, and the demon. Giving old karaoke another go, I built another one right next door, and giving it some solid music picks, I hoped they would become competitors. When 2 parties fight, a third one wins. That third one would be me. I ended up losing though, as my beauty was far too low, but surprisingly, the comfort went up thanks to the youth karaoke being spot on. The old needed a bit of work, but it was just one off on cue. The elders changed their selection completely. A bit annoyed, I upgraded the beauty and gave it a solid guess. Opening the street, and to my surprise, I'd gotten it completely correct, spot on. Absolutely pulling in the dollars and satisfaction all day, I ended up with 2 out of the 3 objectives complete. Only needing the community center, I decided instead to flaunt my wealth and upgrade my karaoke bar, as I had more than enough time left. This actually turned out to be a great move, making a stupid amount of money throughout the day and showing a 95% satisfaction rate amongst citizens. Building up the community hall, I discovered the shop investigator for hire who could discern people's tastes in shops. I needed them for my objective, but being too poor, I let the day run, the uneven citizen beauty ratio losing me 1 point in comfort. This didn't bother me though, as I was once again rich, affording the investigator man and buying a garden upgrade, beating out my citizen count with beauty. My quests complete, I managed to reach 100% satisfaction as the day passed, completing the street and getting 4 achievements. My next and final task though was to bring the creatures of the forest into our society. These little guys lived in the yokai tree and needed 100% satisfaction to show up. I began the street with 1 upgraded modern house. This is a eventful day. I could now build up a ramen stand, building up a recipe for the youth, and upgrading the customer attraction. The general sentiment was less egg and more noodles, which I quickly fixed the next morning and set my sights on a boba cafe. This unfortunately required more comfort that I had to give, so I had a choice between a park or old ramen. But remember that the yokai needed 100% satisfaction, so old ramen was a given anyways, and I ended up with that option. The reviews that day were less noodles for old ramen and more pork for young. I fixed these issues quickly, and upgrading old ramen, I was delighted to see that young ramen had the perfect recipe, and getting the overview, I was 1 ingredient portion off perfect for old. I repaired this issue, but being much too poor for anything new, I decided to save for the day. This turned out to be a great idea, as the next day modern houses were cheaper, and about to buy it, I realized my street had 0 beauty, currently biting the bullet and making a park instead. My citizens saw this as an absolute win, increasing my satisfaction by a bunch, resulting in slightly more sales overall. This changed quickly though. Old people have less money now. Changing the prices appropriately, I rechecked the boba cafe, which I had enough comfort for, but was too poor. As such, today would become a saving day, and I realized the newspaper had lied, and the elderly still refused to trust low prices. I'd still secured plenty of funds though, which I used to construct the first boba cafe on my street, before I forgot tweaking old ramen's price before watching the reviews carefully and noting down more sugar, more tea, and more tapioca. Remaking the recipe the next morning and letting the day run, I realized at this point I was kind of bawling. This sentiment ended abruptly when the paper said the youth had changed their ramen preference. Crafting up a completely random new recipe, I fixed up the boba recipe again, according to the reviews, and attempted to make the old folk boba cafe, unfortunately stopped by my lack of satisfaction. My bank was still filled though, so upgrading my current cafe, I took down reviews for young ramen, more egg, less shrimp and less pork, as well as the cafe critics asking for less tapioca and less cream. Everything at this point was a bit of a shamble, accentuated when the old folk also decided to change their ramen preference. Absolutely awesome news. I tried to fix both recipes and was too poor for anything new, so was forced to save for that day. Apparently, my attempted old person ramen was so bad though that I caught multiple people just visiting the young person shop. The community segregation project was not coming along as planned, so I fixed up both the ramen recipes and the boba recipe, surprisingly realizing at the end of the day I had perfected the new young ramen and the boba cafe for young people. The very next day, they changed their ramen recipe. I might yell very loudly. Able to afford it now, I made a boba store for the old folk and noticed that young ramen was now so far off that the youth would rather just visit the other store. My other financial decision also turned out to be a bust. No visitors at old boba, as I only had 2 elders. And what's more, these 2 elders decided to change their ramen preference. I may commit a crime, but needing more customers, I upgraded old boba, carefully watching the reviews that day and noticing again that the new store was severely lacking in customers. As such, my next goal was an upgraded house for more residents. This being out of budget, I fixed the ramen stores and decided to save for the day. This went relatively well, gaining enough money to, after fixing all the store affairs, upgrade my second house, reaching a total of 20 citizens. My beauty was a little out of whack though, so I ended the day with significantly less satisfaction, but more importantly, a large check. With these funds in hand, I was able to redo some recipes and buy a brand new bookstore, as shop variance was important. The reception was not that positive to my carefully picked catalogue, only one of them being in demand. A quick change up to all of my shops and the bookstore hopefully fixed the issue, upgrading the marketing of the stores as well, and I was happy to see throughout the day that the youth liked 2 out of 3 and the elders liked nothing. Positive news though was that young ramen, old ramen and young boba were finally perfected, and almost on cue, the old folk changed their boba recipe. This is fine. I tried my best to fix the bookstore again, eventually giving up and deciding a community service building was my next goal, as I could hopefully hire an investigator to do all of the dirty work for me. Luckily, the economy contributors were out today and my money count had risen significantly. About time to get the community discount on rocks. Onsen are 50% cheaper. Not able to leave this opportunity, I decided the comfort of my citizens sat in higher priority, and the service building would be for tomorrow. This beauty did wonders to my villagers' satisfaction, even welcoming a strange fella on a bicycle who rode through my street, which was getting quite long. This accommodated a lot of transactions as well, making a huge amount of money now that my bookstore had the perfect selection. My newly obtained riches didn't last long. With a service building finished, I hired the investigator, spending the rest on my bathhouse, and with higher beauty, more citizens, and a good store selection, my satisfaction once again climbed higher. Upgrades were 30% off the next morning, so taking advantage with a community center upgrade and perfecting old boba using the investigator's help, I noticed the off ratio once again and spent the last funds on bathhouse upgrades to not much difference. As such, satisfaction dropped slightly, but remembering 100% was required for the forest lads, I built up a new bookstore just for the elders, upgrading it and once again splurging on my onsen. The day was good, money was made, and by evening I realized all of my stores were perfect in selection and price. One youth had become an elder. This did not affect anything, so with my big riches, a florist seemed like a solid investment, making a nice little bouquet and upgrading the store, reaching a grand total of 41 residents. The expansion had truly begun. Almost all perfect stores, relatively high beauty, and so many citizens led to a massive bump in satisfaction and a huge $733 made in a single day. The florist was the only place to create neutral reviews, so fixing it using the investigator, I also built up one exclusively for the old folk, using reasoning to perfect the bouquet, upgrading my bathhouse even further, and reaching an impressive 100% comfort. Now with all stores flawless and satisfaction at a maximum, I decided to build another bathhouse just because they looked nice, and you know, not to flex, but I had the funds to afford one. Upgrading it a little turned out to be a solid business move as well, Everyone seemed to be happy, including me, when I got an achievement for petting cats and secured 1,000 gold in a single day. As such, further expansion was on the horizon in the form of a karaoke store. Choosing some random songs, I upgraded the building, clearing 50 citizens on the street and earning another achievement. Spending my last 400 on a bathhouse, I gladly watched the day pass by, earning another 1,000 gold, but receiving devastating news the next morning. I had lost $50. This is so tragic. Having to quickly make back the lost funds, I built up an old karaoke and fixed the selection once again before going broke on bathhouse upgrades. I made 1,300 gold that day. My optional objective was to use all of the buildings in the game, and only missing the old home and convenience stores, I built one up and upgraded, as more people would mean more money. This also meant more rubbish, which I was frantically picking up for the entire day. When it ended, I realized my karaoke bars were not perfected yet, so reading the news, I first built up a convenience store and filled it, moving on and fixing the karaoke bars, lifting the price slightly for all of the old folk stores, and finally upgrading the new shop. But you may be wondering, why was I so adamant on picking up trash? Well, to be honest, I've just got so attached to this beautiful street and seeing it covered in waste. I'm just kidding. There's an achievement that asks for it. So, acting as the trash man the entire next day as well, I made a very solid profit, and after checking the convenience store stock, I built up a separate store for the elderly population, officially making the yokai house the only building left to construct. The people loved it, obvious by my decreasing daily profit. My karaoke bars were also a little scuffed, but my satisfaction still at 100%. I was happy to calmly fix up the karaoke bars and the convenience stores the best I could. But seeing the slight overpopulation, I decided a park was the way to go, upgrading it too. Then, since today had a discount on building upgrades, I opened my bathhouse, which has infinite upgrades, and just spammed. I just kept clicking the button, finishing with 136 beauty and an empty wallet. As the day progressed, I was sure my beauty comfort was maxed out, but apparently I still had a little ways to go. But my shops were all perfect, including the karaoke bars and the convenience stores. As such, wallet filled and comfort maxed, I decided to finally build up the first yokai tree on my street, upgrading it once, creating this little character. This meant I completed my optional mission, so with little funds left, I bought 2 services in the community building and began the day excited to see my new citizens. And there they were. No, never mind, they're normal people. And there they were, Kaya the Kappa. There was also Dude the Furry. They were great customers as well, not requiring a new store just for them, just loving everything. 95%. All of these are perfect though, and there it stood. Young Books, where the yokai decided the price was very unsatisfactory. Hoping it was a bug, I built a second home for them and upgraded again. Marveled at my street, which was getting slightly long now, and once again spent the day picking up trash and greeting cyclists. And by evening, I'd completed both of my objectives. Emma the raccoon asked me to see me at some point, but I said not now. I was yet to complete my objectives. First, the trash raccoon achievement, so seeing the youth had a new ramen recipe, I built up another yokai house and watched my bustling street fill with life. As 8 o'clock neared the end of the day, I slowed time and carefully scanned for trash. Missing one today and sure only a day more was required, I fixed youth ramen and once again built a treehouse. With 90 citizens now, there were plenty of littering people, and at long last, I got it. Oh, let's go. Finally, the final achievement. I'm making so much more. I kind of want to see how far, how many trees I can get. More precisely, I wanted a population of 200, and to make yokai make a healthy portion of them. My driving factor? Money, of course, and you'd be surprised at how much I can make. The forest beings still hated the young book prices, so increasing them a little, I spent my money upgrading their homes and finding myself madly picking up everyone's trash completely from muscle memory. Although annoying, it did prove itself useful, making $2,100 that day and investing straight back into the company as to avoid taxes, in the form of a bathhouse, as well as house upgrades for my newest citizens. My street was getting really busy and really long as I approached a population of 100. I must say, the yokai are strange folk. They currently hate young books, but checking old books, they love it. Priced at $5 profit. Checking young books, they see a $5 profit margin, and they are disgusted. I had the achievement though, so buying a trash man from the community building and building another house, upgrading using the last of my funds and starting the day, I was happy that I could just chill out the entire time. My population had hit 100, by the way, but that night I realized the consequences of chilling out when I realized the youth had banded together to hate the middle of the road prices. I was forced to lower them. Look, I need the votes. Building up another house for the forest folk, I decided there was quite enough of them now, and my new objective should be to fully upgrade them, but not knowing how many that took, seeing as there was lots of space for statues, I just let the day run, and thinking back at Young Book, decided that it was just a bug. I had a new plan for taking over the economy, that being more karaoke stores. They were the most profitable, so setting up a perfect selection, I upgraded it as well. Plenty of funds left. I upgraded the first house as many times as I could, watching as 117 citizens mingled and economically contributed for that day, making an insane 3,200 gold by the time evening arrived, with my new bar pulling a solid 400. This proved more stores meant more money, and reading the news, I got to work with a new karaoke bar, stocked it for the youth, and spent more money upgrading the trees. The reason for the profit spike yesterday was a special event, so with nothing on today, I saw an unfortunate slight drop in sales, but curious on how far I could push the whole karaoke bar thing, I made a third one, 5 in total, upgrading it to hold people, increasing my population once again, spending the last 2,000 on tree upgrades, and with an incredibly long street at this point, I saw that the karaoke strategy was not really pulling sales from the other stores. In other words, it was kind of working. I had lost $50. Truly devastating. Building up my 6th karaoke bar, I upgraded the first tree until it finally hit max level, at least visually, with 11 little statues. 160 in population now, the street was truly full of life, cyclists and cats, managing to make 3,200 that day and using these funds to purchase a modern home to speed up my progress towards 200 people. And because the karaoke bar method was slowly dying out, more people means more money, probably. Following this philosophy, I upgraded my second treehouse to max, dumping the rest of my funds into upgrading a bathhouse as the population was quickly catching my beauty. I made a solid 3.4 thousand that day, more people method obviously working, with all of my shops getting more and more customers. Another house down, this time an elderly mansion, which I upgraded, 2,000 funneled into house upgrading projects, and the final 1,000 placed into bathhouse upgrades as I was just 11 of 200. The population boom obvious by all of the activity. 3.7 thousand today, all stores perfect, but with a slight real estate inflation. Instead of a new house, I upgraded my 4th tree house, and once again, my bathhouse. That day, I sat with 4 off my goal, making a huge 3.8 thousand, and the final day, great news for profits, I reached the esteemed 200 citizens, and wanting a nice street, I spammed the rest into a bathhouse and watched my great creation. 226 beauty, 200 people, thousands of dollars a day, and perfect satisfaction. My street was my magnum opus. I made 4,700 gold that day, finally deciding to meet with Emma, who thanked me for all of my work and said their final bye. Thank you so much for watching this slightly shorter video. Please subscribe as I'm trying to hit 100,000, and I'll rate Minami Lane a solid 8.5 out of 10.